31 Ideas That Are Wrong, Part 3, Economics. Hello, and welcome to the Bystander Effect, where we see what's happening but don't stay silent. My name is Keith, and today's episode is the continuation of a series called 31 Ideas That Are Wrong, and we're going to focus on economics. So let's get started with numbers 15 through 25. First up, capitalism equals freedom, choice, and markets, whereas socialism equals restrictions, planning, and redistribution. No, this idea is wrong. There is planning in all economic systems, and there are markets in all economic systems. The defining characteristic of capitalism is there are two classes. There are employers and employees. That's it. Some people run industry, they hire, they offer jobs, other people sell their labor. This is how we define capitalism. Socialism, on the other hand, is the elimination of this division. There are no employers and employees. The employees are the employers. They all come together to run industry. Number 16. Capitalism equals democracy, whereas socialism is tyranny and authoritarianism. Once again, no, and hilariously, it's the opposite of the truth. This is the organization of a capitalist enterprise. It is top down. If you're in this structure, you take orders from above, you give them below. If you're outside of this structure, you have no say on what it does or very minimal say. This is what authoritarianism looks like. This is what tyranny looks like. Actually, socialism is democracy. It's democracy in economics. There is one worker and one vote. Sure, there's hierarchy. You can have management under socialism. Some people have more power in things, but all workers have at some point a say in what to produce, where to produce, when to produce. It is bottom up. Let's keep going with number 17. Socialism has been tried and failed. So now that we have better defined capitalism and socialism, and we can see it's not based on free markets or high taxation, we can see that the systems of the 20th century weren't anything resembling socialism. For example, in the United States, in Western Europe, there was private capitalism. You have the robber barons, your Rockefellers, these guys were the elites, they were the employers. Whereas in the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, here we had state capitalism. They still had this division of employers and employees in both of these systems. And so in that sense, the workers did not have control over what to produce, when to produce, where to produce. And that is the key fundamental element of socialism, and it always has been. So no, socialism hasn't failed. Actually, while we're talking about failure, capitalism has failed everywhere it's been tried in the form of ecological degradation and moral outcomes, etc. Number 18. Capitalism is efficient, whereas socialism is bureaucratic and full of corruption. For every example of inefficiency under economic planning or kind of, worker-run things, I can give you 3 under capitalism, under the form of corporate welfare, buybacks, and in addition to that, capitalism is horribly rife with strife in joblessness. Actually, in the history of capitalism, everywhere it's existed, there has been a major downturn every 4 to 7 years. A major event where people lost their jobs, lives were ruined. This is inefficiency. Socialism does not mean taking those from work hard and giving it to those who don't. You're thinking of capitalism. Number 19. Market capitalism is necessary to create incentives for progress. You hear this, that if we had collective production, if we took away kind of the market, nothing would get done. This is obviously false. Numerous things have been created and incubated in a collectivized, planned way. Yes, the government really did invent the internet. And what you will find under our current form of corporate capitalism is that a lot of times inventions and progress is made and publicly funded, in where the citizenry's money is used to fund things like the internet at a very high bill. No private industrialist would have funded the internet because it can't turn a profit soon enough. So you have this kind of socialized investment in a great technology like the internet. And as soon as that technology becomes viable, then it's shifted from maybe decades in the public sector into private market-based capitalism, and then all the profits go to a rich slither of the elite. So market capitalism does not create incentive for progress. Number 20, capitalism has elevated standards of living, wages, access to health care, etc. Every achievement in higher living standards achieved by working people was made in spite of capitalism, often in violent confrontation with them, not because of them. Again, strikes, joblessness. Oops, sorry about that. This is the history of worker progress, made directly in confrontation with capital and with profit-seeking owners and employers. And as soon as some of these achievements are made, even if you say, oh, we've got capitalism, all this investment, and then the workers win some better lives and access to health care, capitalists, employers, they go back to attacking those and kind of trying to revoke all those gains. So under capitalism, the worker is never secure. If they rest on their laurels, or owners just go towards trying to strip those rights away again. And this is in the core of capitalism, the imperial core. What about the outside of capitalism? We've got to look at imperialism, look to the global south, all of the victims of the international system where wealth is taken from the global south and put in the global north. This has not elevated the standards for people in the global south. So this is another idea that is wrong. 21. Socialism and communism have been horrifically murderous, so capitalism is superior. You hear about this. Look at all the deaths under the 20th century, under communism. If you want to defend capitalism, you should not invoke death and suffering. Easily, 2 world wars were fought almost exclusively for and by the interests of capitalists, with death counts in the tens of millions. Not only that, but again, look to colonialism, the literally countless victims of people who have been brutalized with negative effects that linger to this day. So no, invoking blood and suffering is no argument in favor of capitalism. 22. The stock market is the economy. If you look at the business press or an economic version of the news, how's the stock market doing, etc.? No, the stock market is just a measurement of how rich people are doing. The tiniest minority own the majority of stocks, whereas the economy is a measure of whether people can afford things and live a life of security and dignity, whether you can afford rent and groceries and not live paycheck to paycheck. This is how we measure an economy, not just whether or not stocks are going up. And what you'll find is often stock markets go up while the living conditions for the majority are suffering. And that's because the stock market is not a measurement of the health of the economy. You see a headline like this, economy to recover strongly, but wages and jobs will not. Well, what they're really saying is the stock market will recover. The portfolios of rich elites will improve. So no, the stock market is not the economy. 23. Conservatives are more fiscally responsible. You hear this, that liberals or left-wing people spend other people's money on utopian ideas and giveaways, handouts to lazy people, whereas conservatives are more responsible when it comes to economics. They're the adults in the room. They know how to tighten the budget, run the economy like a household. This is absurd as much as it's false. Conservatives are just as lavish spenders, only they spend it on bombs. This is wasteful spending, not giving food stamps to children. In addition, a pillar of conservative economic theory is based on a lie. Tax cuts create jobs. No, they don't. Industrialists don't increase production and thus hire new workers because their tax rate decreased. That's not why business expands. Businesses expand, they increase production when working class people have money in their pockets. When working class people have money, they go shopping. Businesses have to react to this greater demand by increased production. So no, some lower tax rates for corporations is not what has driven economic growth. And this has been studied. 50 years of tax cuts for the rich didn't trickle down. They're not job creators. Look at in Trump's first term, his big tax cuts. All the wealthy elites did was buy back their stock to increase their portfolios. It was always a ruse. Ha ha ha. We told them it would trickle down. Number 24. Poverty is a product of behavior. You hear this, okay, so under capitalism there is poverty and it's regrettable, but you can probably trace that back to some personal decisions or behavior that the poor have done. No, poverty is baked into capitalism. You can see on this graph, the bottom 50% has not moved over decades. Full-time workers are recipients of food stamps. These people, their behavior is not the reason they are poor. Child poverty, this is not a behavioral thing. So where does poverty come from? Poverty is a tactic used by elites under capitalism. You see, unemployment as a worker discipline device. Precariousness of workers is how capitalists make money. The poor workers aren't poor because they don't know how to save. It's because capitalists are taking too much. There is an inverse relationship between how much the elites take and how much the masses have. It's not a coincidence. Workers lost $3.7 trillion during the pandemic. Billionaires got $3 trillion. So poverty is because of exploitation. That's it, the end. But while we're talking about behavior, what about the behavior of the uber wealthy? 1 in 5 corporate executives are psychopaths. If a monkey hoarded all the bananas it could eat, we would study that, try what is wrong with them. If we're going to critique someone's behavior, it should be the wealthy, not the poor. Last one for today, number 25. Capitalists deserve their large profits because of the risks they take. Oh, capitalists are taking a risk. They're funding industry, so they deserve their lavish profits. Again, this is absurd. What about the risks of workers? It's much, much greater. Workers often live in the area of the job, so they're invested in the health of the community, in the continuation of the production, unlike the CEO or capitalist who's got 3 or 4 houses around the world. Workers depend on the operation to stay viable, or else they might go broke, bankruptcy. Most workers can't afford an emergency expense. This is what risk looks like, and workers are not compensated for this risk. They just get their wage. So the idea that capitalists should be compensated for their risk, while workers don't receive any compensation for that risk, but just their wage, is absurd. Going further, here's a kind of graphic representation of inequality. 1 dot right there is 50K, like kind of a salary. We've got $1 million and $1 billion. Here's $1 billion. The person who has this is never taking a risk. Okay. This is not. There's no risk in this as opposed to that, and we can see kind of this wealth distribution chart, what Americans think is the wealth distribution, the top 20%, what they choose as an ideal, and what it really is. So the elites have certainly taken far too much of their what they deserve. There is a bad guy. There is a crime. This cannot be earned. This can only be stolen. And there is a guy in the center committing a crime with the rest of the working class all around it, okay, witnessing it. They're getting away from it, or getting away with this crime, and we're all witnessing it. Okay, that's it. 31 ideas that are wrong about economics. What do you think of this list? Do you agree or disagree? In this series, these are common ideas that are usually taken for granted in our modern discourse, but that I think are highly inaccurate. And I think the ones on this list in particularly are problematic. You hear a lot of these just said like they're de facto true. Capitalism is markets. So what do you think? You agree or disagree? Is there anything I've missed? And please join me next time for the conclusion of this series where I talk about ideas that are wrong about law and society. Thanks. Thanks for watching. And please, if you liked that video, don't forget to click like, subscribe, comment down below. I'll have more videos coming out on a regular basis as well, so you can follow me all over the internet at some of these accounts, and I'll see you in the next one.